Hello, this is Pushing Boundaries, a podcast about pioneering research, breakthrough discoveries, and unconventional ideas. I'm your host, Dr. Thomas R. Verny. My guest today is Dr. Joann O'Leary, who holds a master's degree in Maternal-Child Health from the University of Minnesota and a master's in psychology from Queen's University in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Joan has published 5 books, including in 2020, Different Baby, Different Story, Pregnancy and Parenting After Loss, Meeting the Needs of Parents, Pregnant and Parenting After Perinatal Loss in 2016, Pregnancy After Loss, a Descriptive Phenomenological Study of Parenting in 2010, and then 2 more. So I'm not going to bore you with that. You can find out all the details on her website, and I will mention that at the end of the program again. Do I say Joan or Joann?
Joann.
Joann, thank you. We have not seen each other for a very long time, Joann, right?
That's right. We haven't.
Joann does research and writing on prenatal parenting and the impact of on parents and siblings and on the child born after the loss of a baby. So this has been, I guess, your main focus of work now for how many years?
Oh gosh, over 35 years.
Over 35 years, right?
Yes.
Right.
First I was doing groups in a high-risk perinatal center.
Right.
And now I do groups for Star Legacy Foundation.
Okay. Tell me about Star Legacy Foundation. What is that all about?
That is a nonprofit who originally was started by a bereaved mother who had her first son was stillborn. And the focus is on research and education to prevent perinatal loss.
And so do you do group work there or individual work or both?
I do a weekly pregnancy after loss group. I do a once a month grandparent group, which is amazing for the bereaved grandparents. And then I do a small twice a month group for families raising children after a loss.
So you said 35 years. So what was it 35 years ago that sort of motivated you to get into this area?
Well, my PhD is in family education. So I came into the medical setting with a very focused developmental approach to children. And when I saw the childbirth educators teaching psychosocial tasks of pregnancy, I thought they are only preparing them for a day in their life, not the lifelong process. And coming from the special education community, they also weren't preparing them for families that would have an unexpected outcome.
Right. And
I thought what they were calling psychosocial were really how old the unborn baby was in utero. That it's the unborn baby that drives parents into changing their behavior. And then when I watched Claire Thorwick, who was the antenatal testing nurse at the time, do biophysical profiles, I said to her, I think you do prenatally what I do postpartum when I go over the Brazelton neonatal assessment with families. And so that's kind of how we developed our first model of prenatal parenting. And then when Linda Parker and I, who was one of the nurses I worked with, did our first pregnancy after loss group, we were going to do it twice a month, like most infant loss groups are. And the parents were like, oh my God, we can't wait another 2 weeks. We want to come next week too. And when they left, Linda, being the clinical nurse specialist, said, did you see all those moms with high-risk pregnancies? And I said, did you see all those babies with attachment disorders? Because I envisioned all these little babies in there saying, I'm here, because the moms weren't paying attention. They were afraid to embrace this new baby. And so that's kind of how our program started, is really seeing the importance of parents pregnant after a loss to know they could still be parents to their deceased baby while working to embrace this new unborn baby.
So the mothers that you see, are they just after the loss, or are they already pregnant with their second baby after the first one was lost?
They're pregnant with their second babies.
Okay, so they don't come after you to help them grieve for the loss.
Well, that's an interesting question. You work with grief and attachment at the same time, because it's a whole new layer of grief when they're pregnant again, because they think they're going to be so excited to have this, be pregnant again. And in fact, it just brings up, oh my God, this baby could die too.
Sure, I understand that, yes, but I'm going back a little bit before that, like before they become pregnant, because they don't become pregnant right after the loss, right?
Some do, but yeah, you're right. I only work with them in the next pregnancy.
In the next pregnancy, right. So it's interesting to me that these women would not seek, these women and their partners, I imagine, that they don't think of perhaps seeing a professional person to grieve the loss of their child.
No, Star Legacy has an infant loss group too for them.
Oh, they do. Okay.
Yes. And honestly, the fathers too, because
Yeah.
I did my research with fathers separately from mothers,
Right.
they are just as scared and just as afraid to attach. And I have some really amazing videos of fathers talking about their struggle of, will I love this baby as much as, I love my first baby? So you work with the dads too.
So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that kind of a question?
Well, first of all, I always say, anytime somebody with a healthy first baby always thinks, I'll never love another child as much as this one.
Right.
So you try to help them say some of those feelings are normal. And that's okay. And then the other thing I focus is that just remember that your deceased baby during at 16 weeks gestation also knew you as a dad or a mom, also heard your voices. And so you're always bringing in the deceased baby along with trying to nurture them to trust that this baby's going to come too.
Have you noticed a difference between how parents react to a loss during pregnancy and how they react to a stillbirth, or a child that dies within a couple of days after birth? Is there a difference?
I haven't seen a difference. We've had all sorts of types of losses, and no, it's the same journey. They are afraid. They're afraid to attach, and families and friends can't understand why they're not happy now, why they're still grieving.
Right.
It's very developmental. You don't know until you get there that it's going to be another layer of grief.
Right. So for how long then? Is there a set time limit? Like, do you have sort of groups for 6 weeks, or is it open-ended?
You know what? That's a good question. It's very open-ended. There is no set structure as far as tonight we're going to talk about, anxiety, because everybody every week has something different that they need to process.
Right.
And so it's open-ended, and the people at, say, someone that's 32 weeks and someone that's just joined that's 9 weeks, who's in a different phase, will say, oh, you're going to be okay. I felt that way too. So the group process really helps each other understand that what they're feeling is normal, and they're all going to be afraid till that baby's in their arms crying, and it's okay, and it's okay to love this baby coming too.
So a lot of reassurance.
Yes, yes. Which is really hard.
Yeah. Do you think that you have influenced physicians' attitudes towards pregnancy and pregnancy loss? Because by what I mean by that is that physicians usually are just interested in the physical aspects. Okay, is this baby healthy? How much does it weigh? What is the Apgar score? Stuff like that. And they don't give a hoot about the psychological, emotional aspects of pregnancy and birth. You obviously do. So I'm just wondering, have you had sort of a positive growth effect on physicians in your neighborhood?
I wish I could say yes, but I'm afraid I can't. So the perinatologists that I worked with, they always still thought I did a grief group.
Right.
They never understood that it was a group to build attachment.
Right.
And we have very, very few physicians that come to our presentations. Very few. So Star Legacy's been really good at trying to pull in people, but no. But that's what's so great about working with the two nurses that I worked with, because we integrated the prenatal parenting model into the medical aspect of it. So I could never have really developed this model of care without Claire and Linda also showing me the medical piece of it.
Yeah, of course. Yes. You have spoken about embodied grief after the loss of a baby. Could you explain that? What do you mean by that?
Well, I wish I could quote the article that I found that in, but it's so true that grief stays in your body. And so when I was at the hospital, we used to do a small session before the group started for the moms that wanted to come early, that did a guided imagery relaxation. And we made a CD, Parenting Your Baby Before Birth.
Right.
And because they need to, and including dads. I mean, I just interviewed a dad a couple months ago who has so much trauma from the loss and so afraid in the next pregnancy. And we talked about getting therapy, because I am not a therapist. I'm very clear, I'm not a therapist, but finding someone to help them release that trauma through massage, some kind of intervention.
Body work. Yes.
Body work.
Yeah.
And you'll be interested in knowing, I interviewed 3 Somali women when I was working on my PhD.
Yeah.
And trying to find out their culture. And after about 20 minutes, this one mom said, "Why do you keep asking us the same question, only in a different way?" He said, "We told you, it's God's will, it's God's will." And I said, "Yes, but what happens to your emotions?" And finally, one of them started talking about her stillbirth. And she started crying. And she said how it impacted her husband. And then she ended it with, "But it's God's will."
Right.
So.
Okay, it's God's will. Yes. My goodness. So let's leave God out of it for a second. Was there anything in your own background that you think contributed to your interest in this subject?
Well, I think part of it was coming from the special education community, a Birth to 5 program.
Oh, yes.
Where I, worked with the babies. I also know that in doing some of my own pre-birth work with William Emerson, that my older sister was really mad my mom was pregnant with me, and she never liked me, although she was growing up. And I realized that it was a memory from the crib that she would leave with my mother and they'd leave me. So I always think about and talk to the parents about, your baby's already here.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say to people, don't ask women, how old is your baby? Not when is your baby due?
Right.
Because I think that would help prevent stillbirths. Because in a normal pregnancy, nobody thinks about stillbirth,
No.
and they don't talk about it. Very few people talk about it in the medical community, yet they do talk about it in the pediatric community. Still SIDS, but they don't talk
Right.
about you could also have a stillbirth. And every night after my group, every week, we end the group by saying an affirmation for the baby that's there. And I start with the youngest pregnant person and say 6 weeks gestation. Here's an affirmation for your baby, and go all the way up, because I remind them all of your babies are listening, and all of your babies understand why you're so anxious. It's not because they're not wanted, it's because they're wanted so much.
Very good. Yes. Yes. Very good.
And that's hard. I mean,
It's
one
hard,
mom
yeah.
said to me when she first started, I don't want to tell you how many weeks pregnant I am. I'll just tell you I'm in the second trimester.
Okay.
And so at the end of the night, when she realized I needed to know how old her baby was, she told me, and another mom said, yeah, you know, when you started that, I would put my hands over my ears and say, no, 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 I don't want to know, because they can think, okay, I'm pregnant, but not that there's a baby inside.
Right.
But then she said, but I realize every week it's helping me know more about my baby and more that, yes, the baby is already here.
Good. Good. Have you had any chance of follow up to see how the kids are doing who were born after a pregnancy loss?
You know, that's a good question. I'm writing another book with Sarah Volman, and it's called Siblings Raised in the Shadow of Grief.
That's exactly it. Yes.
And I have been able to interview a lot of these kids that are now in their 20s, talking about who they are. And of course, the parents, and all parents think their children are wonderful, but even the teachers tell them how wonderful they are. So I truly know that the babies that have been in our groups are different people. They're sensitive, caring. And I also tell the moms and the dads that are in my groups now, your baby learns about grief in utero, because we know from the research on stress during the mother's pregnancy that they're picking up on these feelings.
Sure. Sure.
And I have a wonderful video of a mom and dad talking about, will I love this baby? And as she's crying, and when she's finished, I said, I just want to point out to you, as you're crying and grieving, remember little Jeannie is in there and feeling that too. And that's why they understand grief in utero.
So in this new book and your interviews, are these children any more sad? I mean, is there a kind of underlying sadness in any of these children, or a majority or minority?
Well, I'm biased.
Yes.
I don't think so at all. Although my co-author, her research, some of her stories are older people with different kinds of losses. But no, the majority of people, even one man that I interviewed who came from a horrible, horrible family.
Yes.
And I always ask at the end, what do you want parents to know that are pregnant after a loss? And he said that the emotions of children matter.
Right.
Even though he was pretty dysfunctional in his life, being raised by alcoholics and being the subsequent child, he too understood emotions matter.
So just one last question about these kids. So You said that they're all wonderful. What did you mean by that?
Sensitive, caring, reach out to peers that are having a hard time. And when I interviewed the parents, they would say, they tell me something like that, and I'll say, yes, but have you ever heard it from a teacher? And then they give examples where the teachers say they're the first child to reach out to the new kid that's in the family. They befriend the sibling or the children that have special needs, and they're just wonderful, caring people. But that's because they've had intervention.
Yes, right. So is there a client, I guess do you call them patients or clients, the people that you see?
I just call them parents.
Okay.
Families.
All right. Just call them Joe and Jean, eh? So is there anyone in these 35 years that kind of stands out to you? Someone whose history or experience has really sort of stayed with you?
Oh gosh, there's just so many.
So many, I'm sure, but well, think of one.
Well, honestly, I think about some of the families who had a loss in a multi-fetal pregnancy that were in our group too.
Yeah.
And those surviving children also understand grief and are just like the other ones that are caring and sensitive to others. So I don't know. There's just been so many. They're in my books.
Okay, read my book.
Well, just because there's such beautiful case studies.
Yes, right.
And case stories of how they struggle and how they've embraced their baby.
No, I can understand that. I can understand that. Do you have any children?
I have 3 daughters and 3 stepchildren.
Okay, and what are the 3 daughters up to?
One is a lawyer, one is a pediatric family nurse practitioner, and the other one is a yoga. And she's developed, she's a yoga teacher, but she's also developed halo straw, which is a piece of jewelry that she has people wear when they have anxiety. And she's been trying to market it into the schools, but it's been a struggle. But it's amazing because rather than medicating, she wants people to have something and have them breathe into the straw and calm themselves.
So do they understand your work? Do they appreciate it?
Yes.
They do. So there's no struggle there.
No. When Erin was the youngest, which she would say, oh, what does your mom do? She talks to babies.
But none of your children follow in your footsteps.
Well, I would say Erin's halo straw is definitely that. And she's also written a beautiful song of a case that I had where the baby died while it was going through the birth canal. But we knew the baby was going to die. I think it didn't. I think in that case, there was no more fluid. So even though the mom tried to stay on the pregnancy, he just died in utero. And I think being a pediatric family nurse practitioner definitely has made a difference.
Yeah. Okay. On a different level, if you could have dinner with any 3 people, dead or alive, historical or present, who would it be?
Oh, Selma Freiberg.
Yes.
Definitely.
That didn't take long. Yes.
Mother of infant mental health. T. Barry Brazelton.
Did you ever meet him?
Oh, yes. I've been certified in the Brazelton twice. And my new talk that I'm going to start giving for APA, actually, I was going to submit it for APA, is moving the Brazelton neonatal assessment into the prenatal period. And a third person, probably Anna Freud. I'd be interested in.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. What about Sigmund? You would rather meet Anna?
I think I'd rather meet Anna. And I'd love to see David Chamberlain again.
Yeah.
He was such an influence on my work. And you, obviously. I'll never forget the first conference I went to.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So speaking of that, what was the most fun trip that you ever took in your life?
The most fun trip?
Yes.
Oh, I have to say too, when I was a single mom with my 3 kids, I had a Rotary scholarship and lived in Belfast, Northern Ireland during the Troubles. It was great, but it was an amazing year. And then the first time I went to Switzerland with my now husband, that was beautiful too.
He's a judge, is he not?
Yes.
Yes, I remember him.
But not at home.
Not at home. Very good. When he comes,
he thinks he is.
Yeah, when he comes through the door, you say, "Leave your judging outside," right?
Right.
Right. And that has been a lifelong struggle, I would assume.
He can be very judgmental, that's for sure.
Right.
You've met him.
Yes, I've met him. Yes.
And he doesn't, that poster I have of your unborn baby. I don't know if you remember it, but it gives him the creeps. Because I remember at one of the conferences, it was you or William said, "Where's John?" And I said, "Oh, John, he thinks we're all kind of weird." And that poster really bothers him.
Really?
I think he must have some trauma too.
Probably. Yeah, that he doesn't want to work with or work on, right? So if you won $1 million, what would you do with it?
Gosh, I would definitely give most of it to Star Legacy to support our groups, and give the rest to all my kids.
Sounds good. So that takes me to the last question. What does being human mean to you?
Wow, that's heavy.
It is, but you have all the time in the world. Take your time. What does being human mean to you?
I think it means caring about other people and caring about yourself and reaching out to other people. Being kind. Yes,
that is so true. And especially in this day and age, wouldn't you agree?
Yes. We are in scary times.
Very difficult times.
In fact, the session I was at this morning, on Monday, was talking about infant massage, and we were all in agreement. Everybody should get a massage, not just infants.
Yes, and it's good for the person who is doing the massage, and it's good for the person who is receiving it, right?
Right.
It's a win-win situation.
Right. It is.
Well, obviously, you in the last 35 years and probably before that have been a kind person and contributed to make the world a little bit a better place. And I guess that's all we can do, right?
I've tried.
Yes, you have tried and you have succeeded, and you're working on a new book.
I am, yes. But everything I know and do, it's been because I partner with other people. I don't feel like I've done anything alone. So
what is the name of your new book again before we close?
Well, tentatively the editor might want to change it, but we don't. It's going to be Siblings Raised in the Shadow of Grief. Because there's a chapter on siblings that were alive at the time of the loss.
Right.
And then I also have a chapter of siblings who were the child born after a sibling with special needs. And that's a lovely, lovely chapter. Nobody thinks about those siblings.
No. No.
And it's from families that I worked with at the hospital. And some that I picked up, just knew that I was trying to do this, whose babies either were incompatible with life or did have special needs. In fact, one of the young adults now is 38 and just died in the last 6 months. And his mother wants to have his picture in that chapter and some of his obituary. So, yeah.
Yeah. And who's the publisher? Do you have a publisher?
Yes, it's the same one from my other book. Now, let's not get it mixed up. Rowan and Littlefield. Okay,
very good. So thank you, Joann. Joann can be reached at Joann, that's spelled Joann, at starlegacyfoundation.org. So you can reach her there and she will respond to your emails. Before I let you go, Joann, I would like to draw our listeners' attention to my next week's guest, Dr. Stephen Cole, who is professor of medicine, psychiatry, and biobehavioral sciences in the UCLA School of Medicine. And I will discuss with him the molecular pathways by which social environments influence gene expression.
Wow.
So, yes, that's a mouthful, isn't it?
Yes.
A little different from our conversation today. Joann, it was such a pleasure seeing you again after all these years.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I wish you the best of luck and hope we can meet again.
Okay, thanks.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.